All right, there we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt. I'll be your alchemist this evening, and I'm here with author Timothy Dempsey. Hello, Tim.
Hello,
All right, so for people who don't know who are you?
I am an indie author, and I am the writer of the Wilting Blood series. So far, the only book out is Red Revival. It is a story about a war between vampires and vampire hunters.
And it is here. All right, and website as well. And there's something else, right? There's
Yes, there's Urban Monarchs.
Urban Monarchs, right? Now, this is the first I've heard of Urban Monarchs. What is Urban Monarchs?
Urban Monarchs was my first book. I think
Ah.
Wilting Blood came out much better, but Urban Monarchs is a good lesson to learn. And Urban
Mm.
Monarchs was a really strange sci mafia cyberpunk about aliens
Okay.
having gate wars.
Mm. Okay. Cool. All right. So I haven't read Urban Monarchs. I have read Wilting Blood, off of the
Yes.
recommendation of Leslie Shue, um, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. It
Good.
was a good, yeah, it was a good read. I think I described it as being a cross between Starship Troopers and actually no, I think I just said Starship Troopers with vampires and more blood. I think that's what I said.
I think that is
I,
what you said.
yeah, I'd need to check. All right. And also a bit of kind of maybe anime, a little bit, in kind of the hyper violence of it, maybe
Yeah, there's
some aspects.
definitely anime inspiration for it. The biggest inspiration was Hellsing Ultimate.
Okay, right. I'm familiar with Hellsing. That is one anime that I am familiar with. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, how did Wilting Blood? Well, I guess Red Revival. So, Wilting Blood is the series,
Wilting Blood is the series, yes.
and Red Revival is the first book.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I guess. Okay. So, how did kind of Wilting Blood take form?
I was trying to remember exactly when I came up with the idea. I think it must have been around when I was 14 or 15.
Hmm.
And it started off very, very loosely. And it was incredibly different. Like the Blutes, the vampires were like feral. Um, and a lot of the characters looked different. I think the only character that existed at the time was Mobiel, who's the one that
Hmm.
had vampire hunters.
Hmm.
And eventually, as I had like this loose set of characters and ideas, it changed over time. And like I remember eventually I came up with the idea of there being other like head vampire hunters. That's what the captains came from, and other characters like Agape got introduced, and eventually Isaac. And then I remember when writing Urban Monarchs, I was like, I want to do something fantasy next because I'm much more comfortable in fantasy. I don't know why I started with sci-fi,
Hmm.
just kind of did. And I decided that this would be the best story that I had to tell because
Hmm.
it was the most, I guess, narratively developed. And so I came up with a way to end the series first.
Okay.
And then I split that into steps, and each book has a hint towards the end, like how the book series will end in it.
Mm.
And so then I started writing the first book and learned a lot from the process of writing Urban Monarchs.
Mm. Right. Okay. So, for those who haven't read it, what is the kind of if you had to give like a blurb premise of Wilting Blood of Red Revival, what would it be?
So I guess the shortest way I would phrase it is that there is this country named Fallen Day that has been at war with a I don't even know if uprising is the right sense, but more so there's a vampiric infection in the country, and the vampires have basically hollowed the country out, and the entire center of the country is now a separate vampire kingdom. And these two factions have been at war for 40 years by the start of the story. And during these 40 years, the vampires' god vanished. And this same deity is slowly crawling itself back to sanity and existence. But no one knows this. So the war continues as as it has been through this perspective of the main character Isaac, who is basically a war orphan turned soldier due to the fact that it's been such a brutal war that's just the norm at this point. And so these two factions continue fighting throughout the story. You see the political plots on one side. You see like the way the Blood Hunters maneuver themselves within their organization on the other. And while these two sides are doing this ancient evil is slowly bubbling back to the surface.
Right, and the Bloots are the vampires.
Yes, the Bloots are vampires.
Right, yeah, because so the I guess the main character would be Isaac, who is I think he's 16 in the beginning of the story. Right, and his journey is really interesting. I found he's a very compelling, very flawed, not necessarily strong.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to overcome in the story and in his own kind of makeup. One of the things that really made it stand out as a novel and as a story and made him stand out as a character is the magic system in the book, where everyone kind of has... There are the various kind of schools of magic, and they take different forms, it seems, depending on who's using them.
Yes.
How they've developed. Yes. And his is gravity.
Yes.
So he kind of makes like black holes, like tiny black holes that stick people to stuff and can stick him to stuff by manipulating gravity. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Just making sure I'm not talking nonsense.
Because in the first book, I know one of Isaac's big issues is most other people who can use an elemental magic like him can create it from scratch and project it outside of their body. But Isaac can't figure out how to do that, so he just makes gravity denser around him to kind of make himself and other people move in different ways.
Right, and it's that skill that attracts the attention of, is it Mobile?
Mobile.
Yeah, the captain, and who is very, very well regarded. And a point of tension between Isaac and everyone else is, why has he been chosen when other people could have been? Because there are only a few candidates from a class of I think
100
students. Yeah, from this class of 100, from a class of 100 students, get chosen to be with a captain, and then the rest get shipped off to the front line.
Yes, and Isaac's class only had 17 people get picked, so 83 of them were basically sent to be meat shields.
Right, and there's no illusion of how horrible that war is as well.
No, I think any illusions there are is, and I think they even mentioned this in the book, is there's like a shift in Blood Hunters when they have first contact with the enemy, because they realize what they're fighting is not people for the first time.
Yes,
as happened to Isaac.
Now I won't go into that first encounter because it sets the tone. I'll say that it sets the tone of the story and sets the tone of, I'm hoping, of the series. But it's one of those things. It's one of those books that is really effective at portraying war and the effects of war on not just one person, but on a nation and all the kind of ties that bind everything together. Because that country, Falende, even before the vampires showed up, it was just in a constant state of civil war.
Yes, they Fallen Dayans hate the only thing Fallen Dayans hate more than each other is other people. It's this
Mm,
messed up isolationist nation that has this insanely weird origin story. And they basically decided at some point in order to because there's like a magical influence in the past
mm,
causing hyper-aggression in the people. And they decided the best way to solve this was to just make 5 new ethnicities based on tattoos under your right eye.
mm,
And it's just been these 5 like provinces attacking each other and forming alliances with each other for the entire history of the country. It's never got along with itself, but they're
mm,
also really proud of this. Like
mm.
they're very proud of their history. Uh, One of the weird ways I like to show it in the book is all of their cities are really like grand
Mm.
because they're all trying to one up the other ones.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. I mean, it's it is funny how they're all the kind of layers to the, I guess, the nationalism in a way. They're proud to be part of the nation, but proud to be part of their segment of it. It's a bit like I mean, I suppose it's almost natural, sort of, when you consider sports, where it's
Yeah,
like you support your team in the league, but then an international comes up and you're like, okay, right, well, we're supporting
the
ah
country.
the
Yeah,
country now, yeah, against the other country. It's like that, but but bloodier. Okay, right. So, um, I've lost my train of thought. Oh no, I've got it back. So the other thing that I sort of drew a parallel in a way to some of my own kind of fantasy stuff, where you deal in, it's not just, there's quite a lot of perspectives in there. So you've got Isaac as who's the sort
yes.
of war child,
Yeah.
the Johnny Rico kind of the story during the Starship Troopers again. But there's also um this kind of vampire politician who's moving pieces around the board,
Yeah, Cabra.
who I loved. I loved him. And there's Mobiel, and then there's this completely mad psychopath captain who
Gehenna.
commands, yeah, who commands a group of ex-prisoners who he mentally destroys before sending them into battle. I'm like, oh
He's
wow, what a monster! But he's also really
been
interesting.
he's been like by far the most popular character when I've asked people who've read it.
Yeah.
Um, he's the guy on the front of my website.
Mm. Uh, where's it gone? It's disappeared. Oh no, it hasn't. It's there because I didn't have it up to the top. This guy.
Yes, that's Gehenna Eddic.
Ah, okay.
He portrays himself the exact opposite way of how he is in like
Mm-hmm.
personality.
Mm-hmm. Right, yes. Well, I mean, the thing is, in personality, well, I mean, well, yes, in personality, he's an absolute, like I said, a psycho.
Yeah,
And but he's a really entertaining psycho.
I love writing him. He's having my easiest character to write.
Mm,
I have a there's a really funny scene in the second book, which I'm currently writing, where I don't want to I don't know if this is a spoiler, but someone insults Gehenna
mm,
and he can't hurt this person because they're protected by legal means like his agape, the country's
mm-hmm.
leader, wants this person alive.
Yeah.
So but the person next to Gehenna laughs at the insult, and Gehenna responds to the insult, and while he's responding to the insult he just reaches up to the person next to him and just rips their ear off mid conversation,
Jesus.
and he throws it back to them as they're screaming and he goes, can you shut up? I'm trying. Like, if you're fast enough, maybe they'll reattach it
Mm, nice.
or something. It's definitely delivered better than what I said, but yeah,
Well, he's very, because he's a complete psychopath, but he's very methodical as well in his sort of in what he reveals and when, and kind of how he behaves. I mean, his behavior is not exactly. I don't know if he like checks his own behavior. He doesn't really check his behavior, but he feels like he knows where there's a line and he goes right up to it and goes over it a little bit, kind of tiptoes back and forth. He's sort of like it's like he's playing with whoever he's talking to his own advantage.
Yes. Yeah, he's responsible for some of the weirder aspects in the story.
Mm.
I don't think I've revealed it yet, but it's not much of a spoiler. So if you remember early on in the story, there was a part where there were people with torches running around the garden in the
Mm-hmm.
winter to keep the flowers alive.
Mm.
Johanna's the one making them do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay. Ah, hmm. It sounds now that you say that, I may have missed it in there, but it definitely fits with something he would do.
yeah, it's arbitrary, and it's because, of course, his statue's there too, and he doesn't want the
Mm.
flowers under his statue to die.
Yeah, yeah, and he has the stature and the rank to give that order. It's
Yeah,
like, well, you're going to do this because I'm ordering you, and I'm ordering you to do it because I can. That kind of
exactly.
thing. Right. Okay. Now, I definitely recommend reading this book. Definitely recommend it because it is very good, very entertaining, brutal, but very well. The story is very well done, and it's the kind of yeah. I'll leave it at that. It's definitely a good read and definitely one that I recommend and that Leslie Shue recommends. Um, but I kind of want to touch on I need to remind myself of the title, Urban Monarchs. Right. We'll touch on Urban Monarchs for a second. So you say that was a learning curve. In what ways was it a learning curve?
In Urban Monarchs, I the best way I can describe it is when I had one of my friends at the time read the book as a beta reader, and
Mm-hmm.
they told me that I should write the books like I write my D&D campaigns
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how I structure this, like the ascending order of the story, as opposed to Urban Monarchs. Urban Monarchs was very much Urban Monarchs, I think, in the story is a week long, and
Mm.
it's this main cast who I do love. Kind of, they're the head of this organization, and one of them suffers a PTSD attack, and this guy's like the actual head of the organization. So while he's going through this, um, they all get there's a lot of chaos in the book, but the chaos didn't come together
Okay.
purposely, or it didn't come together as well as it could have. So while like I guess the best way people describe it is like there's there is something there with the story that could have been grown more,
Mm-hmm.
but it just ends up being like an okay read. Like the action Wilting Blood is good
Mm-hmm.
and bloody, although it's blue blood because they're aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in certain pieces there is definitely things they could have done better. I know for a fact the one big issue I have with it is the issue the main character Bishop had was something I like revised that some probably on 15 times and I still was only okay with it by the end.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
it gave me all the tools I needed to write Wilting Blood because I was able to learn, okay, here's what I did right, here's what I did wrong. How do I maximize this for the next one?
Mm. Because you're definitely I think you're a lot younger than I am. I know that. You're in your early 20s, right?
I'm 24.
24. Okay. Okay, so I'm not 10 years older than you. That's good. Only 8. That's fine. So that makes me feel slightly better. So, well, how old were you when you wrote Urban Monarchs?
Okay, so I wrote Urban Monarchs. That was, I think, I wrote Urban Monarchs when I was 21,
Okay.
but I published Urban Monarchs when I was 22.
Okay. See, I didn't start. I mean, novel writing. I didn't start until I was, I think, 24 or 25. Like, Out of the Ashes was my first, and that came out in 2016, sort of mid 2016, I think. And I think I would say that particularly with novel length work, the best way to learn how to do it is to do it first and then see what you did wrong, kind of, if that makes sense. Like what you did, either what you did wrong or where the beats kind of hit and where they could hit better.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
What was so I think in terms of and the other thing I always catch, the other thing I caught, especially writing Out of the Ashes, and something that Leslie Shue caught reading Out of the Ashes, was all the grammar errors I make in writing, or that I used to make. I kind of still, there's the odd one that I still make, but like all the ones that I used to make, like it's tripped me up every time, like the possessive it's every time. Like so,
Yeah.
I would put the apostrophe in, so it'd be it is instead of it's, and it was like it's something that I caught maybe on my like properly caught on like my third book, maybe half the time I get it right in the third one I wrote.
Grammar is definitely it's something I'm improving with, especially with an editor,
Yeah.
but it's definitely one of the biggest pains in the butt.
Mm.
I can I can say with 100% certainty and honesty that when I was in grade school and the English classes shifted from teaching you grammar to teaching you about books, my grades like went up 20 points.
Yeah.
So uh, it's definitely something I'm improving on. It's definitely something I'm happy to have seen progress on, but
Mm.
definitely probably it's definitely something that's probably a lot rougher in Urban Monarchs. But I'm terrified to read my own books because I know I'll pick out every error and I'll drive
Mm.
myself insane. So I try not to do it.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I've just done with I mean I tend to this is something that has tripped me up a couple of times when trying to read Out of the Ashes, which is the first one I wrote, where I get to a certain point, I'm like, there are too many errors and I have to stop before I get annoyed with myself. And I recently, as Leslie Shue's been reading through it, I've read through it. And also because I'm writing the last one in that series now, and it's close to the end. And I was like, okay, let's just read through all these to make sure it makes sense.
Yes, I get that entirely. I'm writing a sequel right now for the first time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a keeping track of who, especially we've got a lot of characters. Like you've got a lot of characters in the Wilting Blood series.
Yeah, and
I mean,
there's more on the way in the second book.
yeah. See, I had the same issue with Out of the Ashes going into the Burning Plains, which is the second one, where the world expanded, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be great to just expand this world and bring in other perspectives and bring in everything. Because my first one didn't have what Wilting Blood has, with where it has that perspective already, where you see up top and you see the Blutes and how they kind of deal with stuff, and you
Yes.
see the recruits and you see the captains and you see people who are more kind of morally more on the lighter moral side, and people like Jahane who is nutcase.
One of the people we do meet in the second book, and this was someone I was when we were going to meet in the second book, no matter how it turned out, was the other captain, Sink Nadine, because he I don't think he says anything in the first book. I think he is physically at the one ceremony, and then Isaac mentions seeing him like in other points in his life. And
Is he the dad of Violet?
yes, Yes. So he is very much on the lighter side. He's like if the good to evil spectrum is there, I'd say that Gehenna's evil, Mobiel's neutral, and this guy's good.
Mm. Yeah.
He has fire magic, so he's pretty fun.
Interesting, because there's bones of contention around Violet as well.
Yes.
In the book about her, because her dad picks her to be, because out of the class, to be his apprentice, and it's like, oh, that's nepotism, and nepotism is allowing her to live while these other people who maybe are better than her all get thrown into the meat grinder. And it's it's a fun thing, and then that comes back later in a good way, I think.
Yeah, that does boil over in this next book.
Nice. Well, trying to keep up with even because I've started to go. I read back through the Four Guardians series. I read back through it fairly recently just to make sure everything's fine and make sure everything's like working. And what I've done so far in Empire of Fire, which is the final book in it. And so far, everything has made sense, but I realized I just completely forgot a character existed. And I didn't realize that I'd forgot this person existed until I read, I think the second or the third, well, actually the second book. So I was like, I know that guy's not in the fourth. I know he's not in the fourth. So I kept going, did I kill him in the third? No, he's in the third. Damn. Right. So I'm either going to have to add him in or kill him in the fourth. And it's not someone who was important at all, but it's someone who just is someone who would be notable in their absence. And I just went, all right, well, let's work out what to do with him and go from there.
I've had moments where people mention things to me from my own book. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, oh, don't you remember when this happens here? I'm like, yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. It's it's always the little stuff. Like, what's this person's name? What color are their eyes? What color did I say their eyes were? How exactly did I describe the color of their hair? So I know it's important, kinda, but I can't remember how. I'm going to need to check that. Luckily, I've got a Kindle, so I can go okay, hair, this person's hair, right, where have I talked about it? Okay, I talked about it here. Great. And now I know. But you mentioned as well, and I'd like to get into this because obviously big things are happening in this space at the moment.
This is gonna be.
You mentioned that you DM and you have you have a podcast, right?
That is very inactive, but yes.
Okay, it exists.
It exists.
Yeah. All right, and I think it is on your link
I don't
tree
know
somewhere.
how what I'm going to do with the podcast right now. I'm actually considering, for some very recent reasons, deleting most of the content on there.
Right. For some
just because of the IP grabs that might be going on. I know that the chance is almost zero, but I don't want that chance to exist at all.
Right. Okay. We'll get into all that in a second. So you DM. So what kind of and you DM for D&D?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So what is your style as a DM, and what is your preferred kind of setting and world and things like that?
I've run 5 campaigns, including the one I did in the podcast, which never finished. And the one I'm running now.
Okay.
And I homebrew all of these because that's a huge part of the fun for me.
Yep. Same.
The first campaign was the first campaign was me in this world for the first time. So the first like huge chunk of it was me figuring out the world with the players.
Hmm.
Then we got into it. It was this semi. It was this not. I don't want to say political because it was barely political. We just talked to like the head priest of like a theocracy,
Mm.
but it was essentially there was this huge war happening, and the entire thing was just like this dead demon 600 years ago had orchestrated its own revival, and the plan was playing out. And
Mm.
then we failed to stop him, and then we had to stop the living incarnation of hatred. Um, and the thing is he was actually the repressed hate that the people of the theocracy had for their god that never intervened in their life. So he was
Mm.
just this machine. He was like an AI that wanted to kill the main god of the setting, but
Mm.
also the way you kill a god in a setting like that is you have to get rid of the worshippers. So he was going to cause a calamity that was going to kill 93% of the world's population.
Mm. Right.
So we were able to seal him away before that happened. And the second one was this. My players are like, "Oh, we want to play an evil campaign," and I'm like, "Okay."
Ooh.
And then we were pirates on this. We were pirates and we were mercenary pirates in this like big setting of warring kingdoms, and we were
Mm.
just getting paid by these terrible people. And eventually, though, it did spiral into the villain. The actual villain shows up, who is this super flamboyant, blue, like on fire, skinless undead pirate. And he could reanimate everything he touched if it was dead, and he could do it to things of higher CRs than himself. So eventually
Ah.
we had to stop him.
Right. That's like the kind of fun evil campaign where you're like brigands. That's fun.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
like we're gonna like conquer the kingdom and like systematically purge people. It was more
Mm.
like, haha, we're going on adventures for money and we're doing like some immoral things.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, that was a fun campaign. It was super episodic because of it was all about taking quests for money.
Mm.
Um, then I did Andradar, which was this one went off the rails, but like in a really good way. It was supposed to be the good campaign, like the oh, you guys are going to be heroes and kill the evil king,
Mm.
and it was like lightning in a bottle, that one. Every one of our characters assassinated himself by accident. Um, yeah, it was this
What?
super convoluted chain of events where I have my one friend only plays aggravating characters. And
Okay.
so he tried sending assassins after the other people in the party, but they got him. So he comes
Nice.
back, and he comes back as a native of this country. And then halfway through his first session, he realized he'd agree with all the propaganda. And then he just became like a villain in that campaign. We had two halves of this campaign running where he was fixing villages up because this character, like, he's not really like an evil, like he's not really he didn't see himself as evil, so he was like fixing villages and shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other players were like fighting for their lives against like dark wizards. And this is the same session. So that one was pretty fun. And then there's the one I'm running now, which I'm using to test out some world building stuff I've been working on. Actually, I'm gonna get a huge map of the setting for this wall behind me.
Nice.
Should be here
Mm.
soon. And that one is we're in the same world we've been in. It's the 5 years after the other campaigns I ran,
Mm.
and we accidentally find a portal to a second universe, and we so far we don't know what this place is, but we found out that this universe is the other universe, but something changed it, and it's basically a mystery to try to figure out what's going on.
Mm.
I've driven my one friend crazy because he hates not having all the answers immediately, and he grills me every like. There was a time he came to my house, and he grilled me for like 5 hours on trying to get me to tell him everything about the campaign. I'm like, dude, I'm
Mm.
not going to tell you anything.
He's trying to butter you up. So I
Yeah,
bought pizza for no reason. It's fine. So yeah, just like sliding questions in.
Oh no, it was just rapid fire from when he got here till he left. It was just he
Oh,
was
he went.
grilling me. He's like, so what's like the like why did the Lich King do this? Like why is he helping us? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you. He's like, but you do know. I'm like, yeah, of course I know, but like why would I tell you?
There was no subversion. It was literally just frontal assault,
Yeah.
torch in the
He's like
face.
he's like, I have some questions. Okay. And then it was the entire night.
Have some questions. Pulls out scroll.
It's exactly like
Yeah,
that. He
yeah.
calls me sometimes with this too. He's like, I
Mm,
have a theory, and he'll tell me like the most insane thing I've ever heard of. My
mm.
favorites are when he comes up with things I think are smarter than what is actually happening. And he's like, I
Yeah.
think it's this. And I'm like, that would be really cool, wouldn't it? And he gets really
I
mad at us.
yeah, I like it when people say stuff that I hadn't. I like that. I like when people say stuff that I hadn't thought of, and I go, "That's happening now."
Yeah.
That's happening further on. Like someone, people talked about the Feywild, and which is like the people who don't know, it's like the wildlifey realm, Fey wildy realm in Dungeons and Dragons. It's another plane of existence, basically, and they said that time wouldn't exist in the Feywild. And there was some reason for it. I can't remember what it was, but I went, time doesn't exist in the Feywild. Interesting. And so I sort of banked that. And then they mentioned something like, I mean, potentially, like you could probably time travel if you went into the Feywild and you left at a certain point, or you didn't leave the way you came. Maybe you would time travel. I was like, oh, that's a silly idea. Write
I
it down
actually have a
immediately.
really recent one of it's the same guy who grilled me. He was watching like deep dive D&D lore videos,
Mm.
and he was in the pirate campaign with the blue fire undead guy. And apparently in old I think I think like maybe in like 3.5, if you threw salt at like a zombie, they would catch fire in blue like harmless blue flames and it would stun them. And he goes, "Oh, is that why he was on fire? 'Cause he was swimming through the ocean?" I'm like, no, but that's really weird that that's like that it's salt that does that. It's the
Like,
same color.
no, but it is now. Well, the thing about homebrew that is really good is it's just way more imaginative and way more. I guess you can take it in really cool directions. You can take it in just different. Just you can take it in kind of out there places,
Mhm.
which really speaks to me a lot more than I've played a couple of the modules. I played Tiamat, the Tiamat one. I can't remember what it's called. I just know Tiamat is in the title. That one was fun, but very grueling, like at the beginning. So you don't have really an opportunity
I've
to
heard
rest.
that.
And I enjoyed it kind of, but also I was like, this is a bit much. Um,
I've done Curse of Strahd. I
mm,
haven't run them. I played
yeah.
in Curse of Strahd and Tomb of Annihilation all the way through.
Mm.
And
I've heard Curse of Strahd's a good one. Is Tomb of
Curse of Strahd is
Annihilation the mummy one?
the one with the lich on the front.
Maybe? I'm not sure.
That's it's the one with it has like the undead guy on the front, the lich, the Sirak.
Hmm. I'm just gonna double check if it is actually the one I'm thinking of. Team of Annihilation, because there's one that's like a desert pharaoh-y mummy
Oh
one.
no, this is not that.
Okay, yeah, no, it's not the one I'm thinking of.
No, this one is you go to a jungle continent to solve a curse, and then you end up in
Hmm.
a Saw movie.
Damn. So
Yeah.
Aztec-y kind of, and a Saw movie.
Yes. It's an Aztec Saw movie because the Lich, the Sirak, his hobby is to make just the worst dungeons imaginable and laugh at the adventurers that die in them.
Jesus.
And
That's
that's where
great
his
though.
lair is. It's
That's
really funny.
great.
He just does it for fun.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
my
like a villain like that who just evenly loves it. So
my
this is my
character
whole
drank
deal.
water and it disintegrated him, and I had to make a new one.
Oh, that's mean, but also great. Yeah. Well, the other
Yeah,
great,
I
the
thought it
other,
was funny.
yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, you have to laugh at something like that because that part of the deal with that kind of module is how am I going to die? In what fun, gruesome way am I going to die?
The real fun part was my character was a Fey warlock, so he had all
Mm.
the illusion magic stuff. And so at first no one thought he died. They thought he was trying to trick them. And then the entire campaign, the ranger Rieger was in denial about this warlock being dead. And so anytime something weird would happen, he goes, "Oh, there he goes again. Come out of like, come on out. Like we know you're there, Masophist." There's just
Nice.
no response.
Yeah. Well, the other great thing about Homebrew is that you can much more easily translate it into other systems, which brings us tidily to whatever the heck is happening with Wizards of the Coast. I talked about this in the last one, which hasn't gone up yet, with MS Arthadian. What's your take on the whole OGL situation, and can they get out of it? Why? What's happening?
I,
Ah.
I want to preface this with saying I'm a graduate student, and
Mhm.
for one of my classes, it was a business communications class. We had to write about a company that we thought was doing something wrong and how we would fix it. So I did a paper about how Wizards of the Coast keeps making like unlimited Magic the Gathering sets.
Mhm.
And there's a thing from the Bank of America saying that they're going to crash their value. Like, so I was writing about that, and in this paper, I said I don't know how they could mess up D&D. It seems like as long as they keep doing what they're doing, the community will keep like pushing it further and further into the limelight, and they'll keep making money. So I'm going to
Right?
focus on Magic the Gathering in this paper. 2 weeks later, this happens. I'm like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Well, this is the well. I mean, they're kind of doing what they've been doing with Magic the Gathering is also kind of what they've been doing with D&D even before the OGL stuff. The
Yeah,
power creep and the just the like no one like there's no race in the game that's allowed to suck anymore. Like
yeah.
this, like I mentioned in a previous one, they made kobolds not pathetic, and that annoyed me that they made kobolds like
Kind of strong, actually.
yeah, like they're good now. They've got. I don't think
Pack
they have.
tactics.
Yeah, I don't know if they have pack tactics. They certainly had it back when they were pathetic.
No, they have pack tactics now because my player, when my one player died, he came back as a kobold.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Remember reading over the thing with him.
Do they still have the -2 to strength, or
I
did they get rid
don't
of that?
know.
Because I don't think any race now has a minus. Like some of them used to. I think the when I was checking, when I was kind of getting into D&D the first time, only kobolds had a minus, and now I don't think anyone has a minus.
I think goblins
Um,
might have a minus.
Potentially, I'm not sure. I've never played a goblin. I don't know why kobolds spoke to me in the way they did. Probably because they're just so. I love the idea of like a derpy little lizard creature that thinks it's that is just has massive ideas above its station.
Yeah,
It thinks it's this amazing warrior, or thinks it's like this genetically superior because it's got dragon blood, like thing, and it's just this derpy little thing that
it's this 2 hit point guy on the ground with this billion of
yeah,
the same ones.
yeah, and they just suck. But like the it's not like the unearthed arcana version of them gives them like breath weapons, and there's no minus, and they've got like
I haven't
weird
seen that.
draconic soul shit. Yeah, oh god, they're it's like it's just not fun. It takes all the
Yeah,
fun out of it. It's like pathetic stuff is fun.
I'd
It's
always like to
all
play
part of
weird
it.
characters.
Yeah, same.
Like all of my characters are not like I. I'm the guy who with the cloak who sits in the bar and I wait for people to approach me and I look moody. When I played a rogue, I played this guy that was basically like a homeless assassin, and he was just had no social cues, and he was just a wreck. And like we were in a party with this other guy who was super upset. He was like he was a drow, half drow, and he was super obsessed with his appearance. So it was this guy who's like sparkling in me, and I'm covered in like rotted vegetables because I tripped into a vegetable cart. Um, Covered in blood because I cut someone's head off, and I walked in the city not realizing it's bad. I like to play weirdos when I play D&D.
Mm. Yeah, I just people who are. Yeah, I like just I do like a good quirky character. Someone that's just got a different way of thinking. And I like
It
doing
makes party
strange stuff.
dynamics fun too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you know what? Do you know what D&D race is really weird, like really messed up? The Grungs, the poison dart frog people.
The point the what?
There's
The
there's
poison
this
dart
there's
frog
this like
people.
really obscure D&D race called Grungs, and you can play
Yeah.
as them. And they have a caste system, and they treat the Grungs who are lower than them like trash. They all have poisons that do wacky things. Like my one player is a red grung, and the poison that is on his skin forces people to eat the nearest edible object. This is real D&D stuff. This isn't homebrew.
Okay.
My character, my friend, did not read anything outside of the monster manual on grungs, and he was just playing this guy as the worst person he could imagine. And then he read about the grungs.
Wait.
Yeah, there they are. He read about the grungs culture, and it was as bad as he was making it. Their entire culture is based on slave trading. And sometimes instead of enslaving
Jesus.
people, if they're in the mood, look like right there, it's sharp teeth. They will just eat the travelers they capture, and they prefer humanoids.
Good grief. And
Yeah,
these are a playable race. Or they
kind
were.
of not. It was super easy to convert them to a playable race, but they have
Hmm.
been a playable race in the past, and I think they are in Tomb of Annihilation.
Okay. Interesting. Huh. I have never encountered one. And
I've never had a normal encounter with one.
now I want to make adventures with them because whenever I hear about something cool in D&D, it makes me go like, "Oh, I want to make an adventure or make a quest or make an adventure that involves this thing,
I
whether
get
it's
that.
homebrew or not." Yeah, like the Bagman. Have you heard of the Bagman?
I have heard of the Bagman.
Yeah, that exists in a bag of holding. I'm like, I love that idea that you pick up this great magical item that is so innocuous that lets you carry a bunch of stuff, that inside it there lurks a creature that is going to just come out and try and
We've
drag
got
you into the bag.
we've got our own creepy thing going on where there's they found a portable hole and it keeps getting deeper whenever they use it. And
Nice.
they finally were like, "What? Wait, what's going on in the bottom of this?" And they found out that it was also getting wider.
Mm.
And they found this weird little grassy plain on the bottom of trees, and the trees had fruit, and there were people growing in the fruit. And
Jesus.
and they were very upset by this.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that maybe will stop them using the hole, but maybe not. Who
I hope
knows?
they keep going.
Yeah. What's gonna
I want those fruit people to hatch.
Yeah, there's gonna be an entire another world in the hole that will invade our realm.
We took it, so we have this item that looks like we're basically working for a lich
Mm.
in that, and this item he has a guy's spirit trapped to it, and that guy is like the middleman between us and the lich.
Mm.
And we asked him about what the like Lotholamar thought about this thing, and he's like, Lotholamar has no idea what was happening down there. Like, oh, cool. Everyone's upset by the whole people.
What do you mean? There's people in the hole and they're growing on tree? What
They
fever
found them because
dream are
they
you
ate
guys
one of the
having?
fruits, and and then the grung ate the fruit and he took it away. And I'm like, yeah, he's covered in blood. And like, was it hard? I'm like, no, it's from in the fruit.
Oh, that's the worst way to find out that there's people growing in the fruit. Or if you're a grung, it's the best way to find out that there's people growing in the fruit.
Our party's like a Halloween store. Like we have a grung, a reborn, not a reborn, like one of those are people that like the zombies you can play out from the Ravenloft book.
Yeah, yeah.
A changeling, a 6'7" lizard guy, um, and then a dwarf priest. It's like the only normal person in the crew.
Yeah, trying to wrangle everyone else, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always the way. It's like you see a mismatched group of random creatures. One is like a cat person, one is a bird, one is just a dude, and one is like a
Yeah,
giant.
there's always a human guy.
Yeah, one's like a giant like bugbear or something. You go, these must be the protagonists. Here they come to try and make things better and inevitably ruin our day.
Yeah, yeah.
It's always how it goes down, it seems.
They rarely let anything rest. The players rarely let the happy endings stay that way.
uh, right. Well, I mean, I suppose considering the legal nonsense happening at the moment, all that stuff potentially is going to be kind of unusable. And I don't know how it's going to necessarily, like you mentioned that the podcast is on hiatus slash potentially a hive waiting to be sued. We obviously like on this channel we've got Streets of Mir going, which is a D&D thing. I don't know how that will be affected by this OGL stuff, or even if it will. I've no idea.
Yeah. I think it might just be people selling content,
Mm,
but I'm not
right.
entirely sure. The podcast fell apart way before this though.
Oh,
For me.
okay.
That happened because of a mix of no one was showing up and I I was like I didn't really know what I was doing with the campaign either. So those two
Right.
things combined and the whole thing just was like, okay,
Mm.
we're gonna call it quits on this one. We're gonna have us go to a wedding and explode. Because in the campaign, that was the explosion teleported us somewhere, but I just cut that part out of the last episode, so that's just how it ends. We explode.
You exploded, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is the thing with like D&D in particular, like these long running kind of stories and these long run life just gets in the way. Just gets in the way of them. And I mean it's sort of gotten in the way with Streets of Mir, certainly. I mean with like I mean that's only a 3-person campaign with one of us being the DM. And it's just like I've I moved countries and another guy's running a business and the other guy's had a baby. And it's just like it's this whole storm of everything just kind of going on. It will start again though. It will resume at some point. It's just well, I mean, hopefully it will. I mean, we don't know what on earth is going on with the OGL with Wizards of
Yeah,
the
see,
Coast.
I think this is going to be an awful decision on their part.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering where it's like. There's kind of two interpretations of it that I can think of, and one of them's charitable, and the other one isn't. The first is that this is a Hasbro decision. This is the charitable one. This is the
Yeah.
Hasbro decision rather than a Wizards of the Coast decision, and they are because they're being kind of purposefully silent and letting the anger kind of build in the communities, the various players, because no one likes this. This is like
Yes.
transcending any kind of
Everyone agrees.
yeah, everyone is in full agreement. This is a terrible idea. And they're just letting all that build and build, and they're just saying nothing, and then looking at Hasbro like that's the
I heard that
charitable
one too.
interpretation.
I heard people say that at the last minute they're going to release a revised version that's not as bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking
Um,
that's also a bit of like the whole like they're playing 4D chess, man. It's like maybe they are, but maybe it's the uncharitable one, which is they really want to monetize a thing that you can't really. I think it might be like people are spending more money on a better product being made by other people that is tied to our system.
Yes, that does sound probably like it.
Yeah,
And the thing
and they
about
really
D&D
don't like it.
is you just need to buy these books once.
Yeah.
And even in a play group, only one person needs to have them to run
Mm-hmm.
everything. So
And with
it's
the
really
internet,
not a consistent purchasing.
yeah. Well, with the internet as well, like you don't even need to buy the books. Like I haven't bought
Yeah.
any of them. I don't have any. I like. Oh, you need a basic idea of the rules, and anything that you don't quite get, you can look up.
All of mine are
It's
like
like,
literally underneath me right now.
now how many do you have?
God.
I can count how many I have. It is literally 0.
10.
10. All right.
Most of it is monster manuals or like the Ravenloft or Eberron stuff because I get them for stat blocks. So I like to have like a
Mm,
wide variety of monsters to pick from if I don't make them myself.
mm, yeah. That's the main utility is having like the monsters, and you can easily just go bang, that's in there now.
Yep.
Mm, yeah. But I'm hoping, I don't know. I'm in two minds. I'm on the one hand hoping that they do fix it and they don't go ahead and it is 4D chess. On the other hand, I am, because also like there's so many people's like livelihoods are tied to the OGL as well.
Mhm.
And that's where things are really kind of messy. I'm kind of also of the mind that if it did explode, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And I'm hoping that if and when it explodes, everyone dependent on it can jump off and get on something else really quick. Either
That's how
make their own
Pathfinder
stuff.
happens.
Right. Yeah.
Like this isn't unprecedented, which is the crazy part. It's like, why would you make the same decision again? You know what happened last time.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, people can just jump onto Pathfinder, or they can jump
Mhm.
onto their. I mean, if they're big enough, they can jump onto their own system. Like Critical Role, I imagine. I mean, either a deal will be done with them to keep them using D&D, or they just can do their own thing. And
They're who all the eyes are on right now
yeah,
in terms of the community.
they've
I
been very
think
quiet
that
about it.
I think that Wizards doing a lot of stuff with Critical Role before this wasn't a coincidence. I think that was a business decision
Mm-hmm.
anticipating this coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So that they because if they didn't have relations with Critical Role and this happened and Critical Role came out and was like, hey, this is bad, that would be it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be
Yeah.
it.
Well, the thing is, like, with them not saying anything, and with the negativity rightfully so high,
Yeah.
it's gonna be. I imagine it's gonna hit them as well if they either came out in support or nothing changed.
Well, in a I guess charitable interpretation for the more positive way this could end. Maybe they know that it is a 4D chess thing.
Potentially, yeah. I imagine
Yeah.
like conversations will have been happening behind the scenes. Um, we're in a kind of position of wait and see,
Yeah.
which is not a great position to be in, really. Like it's
It's stressful.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I'm not like we have our own systems and things that are in development slash in like the playtesting phase. I've got, I mean, I've got one that's heavily in development. I've got a couple of one pages. None of that in any way has any tie to the OGL. So in that respect, there's not an issue. But I mean, it's difficult to kind of look at what's happening and just be like, well, that's fine for me, because it's not.
Even if
And
it
also,
doesn't,
it's good. Oh, go on.
even if it doesn't affect you, there's so many people. Like I'm watching this one. This one guy on YouTube, Mr. Rex, who
Mhm,
does huge deep dives on D&D lore. And for the past few months, he's been kickstartering this huge homebrew campaign module.
mhm,
Um, and it's like, okay, so what happens to this now? Like this guy put months of his life into this, like a few $1,000, like raised community money from like thousands of dollars. And this is like, okay, so now someone can just take this from him and he has to give
mhm,
most of his money away now.
right. Yeah. It's yeah. And the thing is, like the idea. There's another thing that I mean, I certainly hadn't considered, which is the discoverability of new games that
Yeah.
aren't tied to the OGL. Like the OGL has made sure that a lot of eyes are on things like Drive Through RPG and Kobold Press and all of these other institutions that put out homebrew content and put out these systems that are independently developed, and you'd lose that segment of an audience that could potentially pick up your game and enjoy it.
I don't think that anything produced solely by a corporation in terms of tabletop games could ever, specifically D&D, I guess, because I don't know much about other tabletop games or haven't played modules of them.
Mm,
I don't think a D&D module could ever match the value of the homebrew
no,
modules or even just
no.
the ones modules. So I think if you're trying to tie so much of your revenue into these, like most of them, from what I heard, most of the 5e ones are okay, with
Mm,
things like Tomb of Annihilation and Curse of Strahd being like the top, like one, two, and then all the other ones. I'm like, some of these are bad and some of these are okay, and then there's a
mm,
few good ones. And it's like, yeah, but that's like that. If that's the level of quality you're producing, how are you going to keep that audience interested, especially when you took away any of the other like toys to play with, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the sort of what where I am with the things that I'm trying to develop is I want to create basically I want to create like the engine that you can then run with.
Yeah.
So I want to have like a system in place that you can plug and play into any like whatever setting you want. This is tricky, especially to do on a one page, but it's like that you can plug into any setting, plug into anything. I mean, within reason, and then you can just go, and it's fine.
Yeah, I
So
100% understand the appeal of that too, because that's a good thing to have around.
mm, yeah, I mean, it's like having the Unity engine kind of, but more simpler.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea about that. But yeah, it's tabletop gaming is in a very weird place. It was in a very strong place, and it's now been thrust into this weird uncertainty, which isn't good for anybody, especially Wizards of the Coast.
That, I honestly do think it's pretty bad that when one entity has this much power over something anyway.
Yeah,
Uh, the only reason it wasn't a problem is because they weren't doing anything with that power.
right.
But like this is where your money's coming from.
Yeah.
This is the biggest tabletop property in the world, and it's also the most like historically relevant one.
Mm,
It's like, what are you doing? And then again, like the crazy part is like this happened before the fourth edition. And
yeah.
they people went and made an entire different game to play because they were so mad. And it's like, okay, we're gonna do it again.
Mm,
But this time the game's like the biggest game in the world and it's going mainstream. It's like, oh, this is gonna only end great.
mm,
Wow. It went so badly the last time. I
yeah.
can't imagine what's gonna happen now.
I think their logic, I think, partly is they've rationalized that decision away. They've rationalized the negativity of fourth edition away by
Yeah.
going, fourth edition wasn't very good. Basically, I think they've gone, fourth edition wasn't as good a system as fifth.
Yeah.
It had
but
clunk, and that's where the negativities come from with that. Now 5e is more robust. Not perfect still, but more robust, a lot easier to get into. So adding this OGL thing onto that, maybe the reception will be better because we're taking away the negativity from the game itself. Unfortunately, that wasn't the source of the negativity. It was the OGL stuff.
It's what people talk about now. Because people were playing fifth edition, and then an older player will be like, "Oh, you should have seen fourth edition. That was a mess. 3.5 was great." So that's kind of the joke about fourth edition.
Yeah.
It's not the actual reason why it went so badly.
Yeah. Well, I'd never played 3.5.
I haven't either, but I hear everyone talk about how great it was.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted. I'm tempted to have a go. But
this has made me think about it because I'm like, oh, they're trying to make you get they're trying to go full online for sixth edition. I'm just gonna go 1.5 back.
Yeah, yeah. I'd go 1.5 backwards because sticking with 5 is gonna potentially create some problems. But yeah, going like this because I keep hearing that 3. I hear it was a very crunchy, but there was a lot more. It was more intricate, basically. Is this the advanced D&D thing, or is this something else?
No, but that's where that came from. That's where they released a lot of that. Like, hey, you can go fight like a CR40 dragon in this. It's like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
like that. Like that's where a lot of those books did come from. And I know a huge thing is people try to take. They're like the ones where like there was like the orange dragon or the salt breathing yellow dragon that we didn't get in 5e, and they're trying to like, oh, here's like the stat blocks for these. It converted. It's also very close to fifth edition in terms of a lot of how the stats are laid out.
Right.
And that changed a lot in fourth edition. And then they brought it back probably for a, hey, look, it's closer to what we were doing before kind of thing for fifth.
Yeah, because I can't get my head around. I've encountered second edition in things like Planescape Torment and Baldur's Gate, and I can't because I can't. I don't get it. I don't get what's going on with second, and they're based on second. I'm like, I can't get into this game because I don't know how it works. And now these are like digital games. You don't have the manual there to study. So I'm just like, I don't know. I find Planescape easier to kind of wrap my head around than Baldur's Gate, but still, it's just like I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I guess that's the other, like the video game space as well that all use the OGL. So what are you going to do with that?
I have no idea what this is going to happen. I just know it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's absolute mess of a decision. So what have you played outside of D&D?
So I've overwhelmingly played D&D. I've done one deviation. I don't know what it was called. It was like a one shot, and I don't know. It was still a fantasy thing, but I'm not sure what it was. We actually did it before a D&D session, and then on the podcast I wanted to do like a release. I don't know when I did this. I don't know if I did this the weeks leading up to the book coming out, or if I did it like after. But I wanted to do a thing set in the Wilting Blood, like Fallen Day. So I had to make a system for that to run, and that like months beforehand, and like play test that. So I have like this Google Doc of like, here's how you make like a Blute Hunter character, and here like blah blah blah. So I did that, and that worked pretty well. That was pretty fun. It was just me and my one friend. So that uses a like a point spend for magic. Like you have like 20 points. Use -4 to like create metal. Use like -2 to move metal that's already around. He was a metal guy, so this is a good example.
Cool. Nice. Like I've played so MS Arthadian system, Reborn in Power, been playing that. That's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Blades in the Dark, I've been playing, which is very fun as well. Um, it's a different beast to D&D. Reborn in Power is similar enough kinda to D&D in certain aspects that I can kind of be like, okay, it's in a sci-fi setting, but I can wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Blades in the Dark is just completely different. I'm like, oh, this is interesting, learning this system and kind of working with it and kind of building a character within it. And of course, the other games I've played are ones that I or Lee have developed. So Alchemy being the main one, which is the purpose of the channel. And finally, thanks to D&D, we may be getting into the purpose of the channel, which is playing Alchemy and like playing and like actively game deving Alchemy. So
Silver lining, I guess.
yeah, so yeah, definitely, yeah, silver lining to the sheer unbridled madness of Wizards of the Coast. Yeah.
Regardless, it's gonna be an interesting event to watch as it continues to explode outward for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I haven't seen anything like this before, that especially in recent times, actually. I may have seen something like it, that has completely transcended any kind of social or political barrier. Everybody is just pissed.
It's just the worst possible thing, and it came out of nowhere too. There was no, we're gonna have a huge announcement. We're gonna do this. It was literally just one day. This is in the news cycle, and it was like because a leak happened. Right, I believe it was from a leak.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's see how it plays out. Let's see how it plays out. And on that note, I think we will pause there. So, where can people find you and find your stuff?
So the best place to find my books are on Amazon. Wilting Blood, Red Revival is the book, or Urban Monarchs. I have an Instagram, which is Tim Dempsey Author. That is the most active social media platform I'm on.
Okay.
McKeeb Sequence on minds.com. And then McKeebStories.com as my website.
All right, super. Right, well, you can find me at Matt Waterhouse Author on Minds and on Instagram, which I rarely plug, but you plugged yours, so I'll plug mine as well. Why not? I'm still not going to plug the Facebook because I can never remember what the actual thing is that I call. I don't know. And yeah, after all that rambling that I just did, we'll see you next time. What a note to finish on. Good grief.